Picking up the alignment that started at the tip of the Federal Triangle in D.C., through New York City's Central Park, to its endpoint at the center of Stonehenge, we are wondering, why would the Founding Fathers in D.C. and city planners in New York City conspire to link their fair cities with this ancient temple? The reason is simple. Stonehenge is at the heart of the mystery. Let's take a closer look. The first monument at the site was begun during the Neolithic period, around 3,100 years before the Common Era, and Stonehenge was completed during the Bronze Age, approximately 4,500 years ago. Here's a reconstruction of Stonehenge Phase 3 at its height, showing the sarsen ring with its stone lintels, huge trilithons, and smaller bluestones. The larger Aubrey circle is a ring of 56 holes, accommodating 4 standing station stones. Connecting the station stones, we see what researchers call the station rectangle. The amazing thing is it has precisely the same 5:12 proportion as we've already seen in D.C. and New York City. Now we see where this proportion comes from, as this is surely the oldest known example. The astronomer Gerald Hawkins has shown how the station rectangle encodes specific astronomical phenomena, including cycles of Earth, Moon, and Sun, commemorated by important festivals in the Celtic calendar. Stuckley, one of the founders of the field of archaeology in the 18th century, whose great work was studying Stonehenge, claimed that Freemasonry was a legacy of the Druids, who in turn got their knowledge from the ancient Egyptians. The 7-pointed star inscribed within the Aubrey circle clearly locates the sarsen ring and frames the horseshoe of trilithons and bluestones. After identifying 7 as ISIS's secret number in New York City, I'm wondering if this 7-pointed star isn't the Star of Isis. The Egyptian civilization was at its height at the time of Stonehenge's completion, and although we have no archaeological evidence physically linking the two cultures, it remains an intriguing possibility. Avebury and Silbury Hill are a short distance from Stonehenge. Archaeologists say both of these monuments were built at the same time as Stonehenge, approximately 5,000 years ago. The late John Michell, said to be father of the Earth mysteries, and surveyor and researcher Robin Heath, discovered amazing relationships between all 3 Neolithic monuments in terms of their precise locations upon the Earth. The base of Silbury Hill is 864,000 feet from the center of Stonehenge. The sun's diameter is 864,000 miles. The distance from 51 degrees north latitude to the latitude of Stonehenge measures 10.8 Egyptian royal miles. The mean radius of the moon is 1,080 miles. The latitude of Stonehenge is 17.28 miles from the latitude of Avebury. We learned in D.C. how 1728 symbolizes the cube. Avebury's latitude is precisely 360 divided by 7 degrees north. Dividing a circle into 7 parts yields the Star of Isis. The placement of Stonehenge, Avebury, and Silbury Hill encode the numbers of the sun, moon, cube, and heptagram star. Please measure these things yourself in Google Earth or with other methods. This hard metrological evidence should completely revise our understanding of prehistory. Early in the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a quarry in the Pressley Hills where the bluestones used in Stonehenge were mined, approximately 130 miles from Stonehenge. Putting aside the practical issue of how the builders transported these large stones to the building site, let's focus instead on an even greater mystery. Heath had surveyed the distance from Stonehenge to an island due west in the Bristol Channel called Lundy. When Heath told Michell that the distance from the center of Stonehenge to a small hill called the Tump at the center of Lundy Island was precisely the memorable number 123.4 statute miles, Mitchell recognized the number from his research, and then all the pieces quickly fit together. A statute mile is equal to 5,280 English feet, and is still used to measure distances on roads in the United States. Michell and Heath drew a triangle connecting Stonehenge, Lundy, and the Presley Mine. Two such matching, interlocking triangles form a rectangle that has the same proportions as Stonehenge's station rectangle, and amazingly is exactly 2,500 times larger. This is the Greater Temple. What is more, the distances in the Lundy rectangle fit ancient Egyptian measure. Robin Heath's brother Richard pointed out in Sacred Number that 123.4 statute miles is precisely equal to 108 royal miles, the same unit that we've seen in Edinburgh and DC. This is no arbitrary distance, as 108 royal miles is 1/32 of the polar radius of the Earth. The architects of Stonehenge must have chosen the building site in relation to an origin point originally selected at the center of Lundy Island. It's absolutely sublime the way Stonehenge resonates with the whole region and with the planet. As above, so below. 108 is a number sacred to many of the world's religions. For example, there are 108 prayer beads in the Holy Rosary. The Rosary is a key devotional path in the Catholic veneration of Mary. The worshippers' fingers keep track of the number of Hail Mary prayers they recite by moving along one bead at a time. Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains all use japa mala prayer necklaces in much the same way as Catholics. Incredibly, japa malas are most commonly made with exactly 108 beads. These too are fingered as the devotee chants or repeats mantras. Whether the worshipper is conscious of it or not, the moon is ultimately behind what they are actually venerating in 108 recitations. As I already mentioned, the mean radius of the moon is 1,080 miles. The connection between goddesses and the moon is as old as humanity. Coincidentally, the element silver, which has always been associated with the moon, has an atomic weight of 108 grams per mole. In The Lost Science of Measuring the Earth, Michell and Heath show how the English foot was derived from the Earth's equatorial circumference. The distance around the equator equals 360,000 times 365.242, with incredible accuracy of 99.994% the current standard. This means the distance around the equator measured in English feet is the number of days in a year times the number of degrees in a circle times 1,000. Historians have lost track of when exactly the foot was invented in the mists of time, but you'll usually hear some tired anecdote about some old king's big foot. We can now confidently say that whoever defined the English foot knew the equatorial circumference of the Earth with an accuracy in the thousandths of 1%. We only achieved this level of precision in Earth measure in 1995, when the Global Positioning System, or GPS, became fully operational. Clearly, we are not the first to achieve this level of technological sophistication. The mile is also based on the dimensions of the Earth. There are 12 to the 5th divided by 10 miles in the meridian circumference of the Earth. 528 is the resonant key that both defines the statute mile, because 5,280 feet are equal to 1 mile, and the central frequency of the ancient solfeggio, an ancient musical scale used in religious chanting. Metrology, the science of measurement, is one of the keys to decrypting the ancient mysteries. After all, the word geometry literally means earth measure, and virtually all ancient measurement systems were based upon the dimensions of the Earth. As John Neal laid out in his groundbreaking book, All Done with Mirrors, which was subsequently expanded upon and popularized in books by John Michell and the Heath brothers, the English foot turns out to be the root of the ancient system, wherein units designed to measure different scales were interrelated by fractional relationships. The way the ancient system used simple fractions is analogous to how the metric system uses powers of 10 to interconnect units used at different scales, such as millimeter, centimeter, kilometer, etc. As if these discoveries weren't enough, John Michell and Robin Heath stumbled upon yet another amazing find. There is an island just north of Lundy called Caldy, where there is a very old priory church built over an ancient Druid menhir. This island is located at the 2 to 3 point, along the Presley-Lundy edge of the figure. Musicians will recognize this proportion as the fifth, the most fundamental interval in music. If you draw a line connecting Stonehenge with the precise 2 to 3 point, roughly coincident with Caldy, you get the following proportion. If the Lundy-Stonehenge line is 12, then the Caldy-Stonehenge line is the square root of 153. Believe it or not, we'll see this cryptic number 153 again in the Louvre Pyramid and also in the Bible. So what's up with the square root of 153? Simple. It equals 12.369, the number of full moons in a year. So the proportions of the simple diagram encode cycles of sun, earth, and moon. This is far too much to be explained away by chance. However, Michell and Heath don't offer a theory as to how Neolithic tribespeople knew the precise size of the earth, surveyed such long distances, or understood subtle mathematical and astronomical relationships, living in what we know for certain to be an utterly primitive physical culture. Logically, one must consider the possibility that someone other than Neolithic tribespeople built Stonehenge. Michell and Heath's work sadly hasn't been accepted by the scientists of our times, and is ridiculed as pseudoscience, because their research has exposed how little we really understand about the origins of civilization. I, for one, urge you to keep an open mind, and to weigh the evidence yourself using the scientific method. Academics today have little tolerance for theories that completely upset the apple cart if they wish to keep receiving funding. I don't have an unassailable theory either, but I will say that the builders of Stonehenge sure had some extraordinary architects directing their work.